The late morning program with Namarasa podcast.
Wait to get at her, Shrivasati, go to Bhakta
You have to
Vrinda.
speak at the level you're going to speak.
Oh.
You're good. You're good. We're rolling. We're recording.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, everyone. You're listening to the Namarasa podcast, the #1 Hare Krishna podcast in the world. I'm here with an old friend, Mathura Prabhu. Thank you for joining me. And His Grace, Mahatma Prabhu. Thank you so much for joining me, Prabhu. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
In this very cold January day.
If I knew the material world was going to get this cold, I never would have come here. It's so cold out there.
Yes, very cold.
Ooh.
So this is your second appearance on the late, well, used to be the late morning program, but I changed the name now to the Namarasa podcast.
Oh, okay.
Because that's what most people refer it to, so that's why I just changed it. But
Okay.
I wanted to get straight into it, Prabhu. In your travels as a spiritual leader in ISKCON and like that, so what do you feel is the thing that devotees are challenged with most, and what kind of advice would you give to how to remediate that?
I would say the things.
There's
many
right?
things. Japa is a huge challenge. And part of the challenge with japa is time commitment, just finding time. People are busy, and the problem with japa is when you're busy, your mind is very passionate, and it's hard to chant unless you're sattvic. And if we force ourselves to chant and we don't like to chant, then it becomes almost like a torture. Just doing it, we don't like it, we don't look forward to it. And so then often we just kind of reduce it or put it off for later, and later never comes. Like that. So that's why I do japa workshops, to try to deal with that. Issues that devotees had before they joined ISKCON that were never resolved. Issues maybe they didn't even know they had until they join. They get older, they see, oh, I have problems in relationships perhaps, or I have problems in just being honest with myself.
Yeah.
Or, it could be anything, boundaries, or I don't like myself. I don't think Krishna likes me. These things are quite common. Another common problem is not finding my dharma. Like, what should I do? I'm not sure. I don't know. And when you're not inspired about something, then that's a very dangerous position to be in. Like, what do you like to do? What could you? At one time, Prabhupada asked a devotee gave up his duty as temple president. And so Prabhupada said, well, what can you do that you could do the rest of your life? Like, what is that one thing? I thought, that's really beautiful. Like, I would ask that to everyone. What can you do for the rest of your life? That you could just every day get into it. Because obviously that would be in something that inspires you. So I think that's really important, finding what inspires us. There's probably a lot more that's not coming to mind right now, but it'll come up when we talk.
Sometimes I think that maybe japa is not for everyone. That's probably like a sacrilege thing to say.
Yeah.
But I know people that it just they can't do it. Mm-hmm. So is that something? Is that true, or is it? I mean, there's so many processes of devotional service, right?
Yeah. This is how I look at it. I look at the basic instructions Prabhupada gave us, 4 principles and
yes,
16 rounds. So my whole meditation for the last maybe 20 years is I want to develop courses on those things that we're challenged with, because in my own self-development, I realized there's a lot that I thought I couldn't do or I didn't do well that I could learn how to do well. And I had to learn things about myself, which were preventing me from doing it well, like how I make excuses and how I give in to things and how I'm not motivated and I could be motivated. So my idea was that if we're asking people to chant japa, but we're not teaching them how to do it, that's like almost like, to me, sacrilegious. It's like unfair. Like you're, what to speak of asking them to be celibate. And just go, well, how do I do that, Prabhu? Oh, just chant Hare Krishna. Well, how do I do that? Oh, well, you start on this bead, then you go to this bead, and that's your basic instruction to how to chant. So I feel like you can't say, I can't do anything unless you've been guided by some expert who can help you both in the process and help you understand yourself and your mind and all of that. And then, in most cases, you could change. You could find out how to do it. So I developed a course on sexual purity. I thought, I'm not going to, like, if I'm going to ask somebody to be celibate, then I should show them how. We have courses, my wife and I, we have courses on marriage. Everybody's getting married, right? Okay, well, let's have a course on it. We have a course on vows. You're going to make vows, marriage vows, initiation vows. Well, do you have any idea what a vow is? I never had an idea what a vow is or was when I made it. So that's my personal experience. Like, there's so much we can do and so much we can be that we could never do or be if we weren't given proper instruction, guidance, and guidance how to just, work with ourselves, because we're the big obstacle anyway.
I really like that. That it's not just about, okay, do this thing, but it's also about how to do the thing.
Yeah.
Whether it's chanting, whether it's celibacy or whatever, you need to have the rule to jump. Feel free to jump in if you.
Well, I'm thinking how so much of this, it's coming from this rich culture, this rich Vaishnav culture. And we're brought up with basically almost cultureless, Americans, or even as being lost in India.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when I'm hearing you speak about this, Mahatma, like all these courses, vows, celibacy, we're not taught these things growing up anymore. And I'm sure that was passed on in past traditional ways of, Brahminical cultures and how to do this. But we're kind of left in the dark right now.
Yeah, well, it's kind of weird when you think about it, because if you really look at what we're asking devotees to do, we're basically asking them to become pure devotees. You should be forgiving, you should be tolerant, you should be humble, you should be sense-controlled, and just go down the list. You should be peaceful, you should be sattvic. Okay, sounds good. How do I do it? So I developed a course on forgiveness, because so many people would say, I want to forgive, but I don't know how. I said, and I thought, that's kind of a pretty standard problem. It says in our books, you should do this, but no one's broke it down into a process. You should control anger. Well, I have anger issues. Well, how do I do that? Well, so what are devotees forced to do? They'll go to the bookstore and buy a book on how to forgive, how to control anger, how to, live in integrity. And do you know what the problem is, I believe? We misunderstand this teaching that if you're just Krishna conscious, all good qualities will come. So that if you don't understand it, then you think, well, I don't need to learn how to forgive. I don't need to learn how to become humble. I don't need to learn how to be celibate or vegetarian or anything, because I just become Krishna conscious and it will come. And someone will say, yeah, look, you became vegetarian being a devotee. And I say, yeah, but I had to take a vow also. So if it just comes, why take a vow? I have to work with it. I have to read the labels. It's part of the process, right? So I saw in teaching the class on forgiveness, I divided it into maybe like 25 steps. And then people would come and say, I'm trying to forgive, but I can't, would take the course. And then they'd come out and say, yeah, I'm going to let it go. They understood. And the beauty of it is that it was based on our books, but you have to be a teacher in that genre of teaching to extract from a book and come up with a step-by-step process.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's great to do it. I love to do it. But that's basically what I did. Then I saw another problem, this huge problem, and it's similar, slightly different, but similar. When you invite people into a spiritual movement, you're putting them up into a situation where it's very easy for them to feel guilty because they're going to fail. Like guaranteed. But no one says, you're going to fail. You're going to have all these high aspirations to become pure in like 3 weeks, but you're going to fall on your face. And so that starts happening, and then the guilt, the shame comes. Krishna doesn't love me. It's just like I don't like myself.
Right.
Perfectionism comes, if you're a perfectionist, you have to deal with that. So then I thought, we need a course on self-care. We need to deal with this. Like, you're okay. Prabhupada accepts you as you are. You can be better. But it's not that Krishna doesn't love you, you know. And so I just see when I travel, like, devotees, they misunderstand things, and they're just causing themselves a lot of unnecessary misery because no one's explained it to them. And then what happens is they listen to classes and they make all these conclusions based on classes, you know, because you're teaching tattva. It's like this.
Yeah.
So tattva is very black and white. And if the teacher is not nuancing it, then it's just like this. And I'm not like this. So, you know.
Therefore, you are bad or something.
Yeah, you know, it's like, yeah, I'm useless. I'm not going to make it, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So that's quite a pervasive problem. And we already bring it with us. If you weren't showed affection or you had a hard life, then you already bring that. And so I guess God doesn't like me because this and that happened, you know. So I'm basically seeing there's a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of expectations. And so we're not explaining the misunderstandings well enough, and the expectations are like off the charts, and no one's saying, no, you don't have to worry about that now. That's way beyond you. But this is how we do it. Then I did a class on humility. I thought, oh, well, we're supposed to be humble. That's like the essence. Let's do a class. What does it mean to be humble? How do you do it? You know, just to explore it. So for me, all these courses were like incredibly edifying to go very, very deeply into what the false ego is, why it's there. But in the self-care course, it all came together when I would just teach devotees that if you're a conditioned soul, and if you're struggling, and if you're not perfect, you are perfectly normal. and once you understand that, it's like, oh yeah, you are exactly where you're supposed to be at this stage in your bhakti, like everyone else.
Yeah.
But if you don't think that's right, and you think you're supposed to be up there, then yeah.
Could that also go the other way, in the sense that you might get too complacent because you're too much pushing on the extreme of, this is just who I am? Because I can say that for myself for sure.
Right.
That I say, oh, Krishna loves me for who I am, and but that causes complacency for sure.
Yeah. Actually, they did a study on this.
Really?
Yeah, they actually did a study. Because the intuition says if you're hard on yourself, that's what will get you motivated. But the study proved the opposite. What they found is if you're hard on yourself, it has short-term benefits, not long-term. And if you're not hard on yourself, but you're self-caring and self-loving, that has the longest-term benefits. So here's the little thing that you didn't consider, and most people don't, is that if I actually love myself, if I actually care for myself, and I'm taught, you know, accept yourself as you are, I would never allow myself to stay as I am if how I am is not good enough. So then I came across this statement by a devotee, and I don't know who this devotee is, but I offer my dandavats at his feet for saying this. He said, Prabhupada loves us, and therefore accepts us as we are, but he loves us so much he won't let us stay as we are. And so that's the answer to the question. When you actually have self-care and self-love, you will never let yourself stay lower. You will never let yourself not reach your full potential. But at the same time, you'll accept yourself. Now think about it. If I don't accept myself, it's negative, right? It's just, I don't like myself, I'm not good enough. It's all negative. How can a negative create a positive? It's all negative mindset, negative thoughts, negative energy. So if like, I'm normal, I'm okay, I'm trying. And then Prabhupada says, Krishna just cares if you're trying. And then there's a story, and Prabhupada, not a story, but Prabhupada said, even if you try and you struggle and you fail, Krishna sees, oh, look how much he struggled. Look how much time he took. And so one time, this devotee wrote a letter to Prabhupada, and he said, I'm always getting up and falling down and trying again and falling down. And there were some devotees with Prabhupada, and they were saying, Prabhupada, we get up, we fall down, we get up, we fall down. So Prabhupada read them the letter. And after he read the letter, he said, just see how he's struggling. That was a compliment. So, you know, to think like our guru is, you know, unhappy with us because we're not perfect. It's not like that. And I'm bad because I'm normal. So once you like, okay, if you just accept yourself as you are, that's like a huge relief, right? And so all that negative energy goes away. And then, okay, so now I can work on improving because now there's no negative. But if I just hate myself, well, why would I even want to improve? Because I'm a bum and useless, and anyway, nobody cares. So the negative, it can't work because it's negative. And so if you create positive and you care for yourself, you won't become apathetic. You will just say, well, I care about myself, so I should move forward, but I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm not bad. There's nothing wrong with me. And a lot of devotees feel there's something wrong with them, and I feel like, wow, that's really bad that you have a movement that's spreading around the world, making people feel there's something wrong with them. No, that's not good.
So it sounds like really transformation in Krishna consciousness is looking, seeing where I'm at, accepting where I'm at, and then also struggling to move beyond that at the same time. So it's both is happening.
Exactly.
And when I'm hearing it's in relationship with Krishna. It's Krishna loves me, Krishna accepts me.
Yeah.
So let me hold on to him. So can you talk more about developing our relationship with Krishna?
Well, a beautiful idea, and sometimes misunderstood, is Krishna loves me. So if you have low self-esteem, it's like, why would he love me? That doesn't make any sense. There's nothing about me that's lovable. And so I say, Krishna does not love you because you're special and you're great and perfect. He loves you because he's great and special and perfect. That's why he loves you. So how can you love Krishna if you don't believe he loves you? Then what are you reciprocating with? But once you understand he loves you, then it's like, oh, somebody loves me and they want me to love them. It's all about reciprocation with the love. And so therefore, every day I wake up and I think, Krishna's waiting for my love. That's what he wants. And he's giving me his love. And so what kind of fool am I to just turn my back on it?
Yeah.
And so when people say, what is bhakti? I say, God loves you and he wants you to love him. That's bhakti. Right? And so when Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says, surrender to me, I reinterpret that or retranslate that as, I love you, would you love me too?
Wow.
And then when you look at it from that point of view, then that becomes the Paribhasa Sutra of the whole Bhagavad Gita. That's why Krishna's speaking Bhagavad Gita, to get our love. It just takes him, 18 chapters to take us through the web of our material conditioning and entanglement. But that's really what he's saying. And so when you look at the Gita that way, it's like, oh, the onus is on me. He's like, his side of the relationship is perfect. Now it's just about me. It's like, oh. So when we chant our japa, you can be thinking, okay, well, now it's payback time. Krishna loves me and I get to pay him back every day. So I'll chant. He likes me to chant. He likes his name. And when I'm in that mood, when I'm chanting, I'm just praying, Krishna, can you help me love you? Because I know you want me to love you. And if I don't love you, I'm going to love something, my dog, my cat, my car, my guitar, whatever. So Hare Krishna, could you help me love you? Because I know you're waiting for that. And so that's why I think it's unfortunate if someone misunderstands Krishna's love. Like, why would he love me? It's understandable if you weren't loved growing up, you might think like that.
You talked about that principle of self-care. What are some other things that you teach in regards to self-care?
One really beautiful principle is, and this is really funny, when I wrote an article on self-compassion many years ago, and it kind of turned some heads, like, where is self-compassion in our books? Where is this whole idea there in our books? And when I was creating the course, I kind of hit a few jackpots, what I thought were jackpots. And the verse, anukulasa sankalpa, which is the first item of surrender, and the second item, pratikulasha varjanam, accept what's favorable, reject what's unfavorable. And I thought, that actually is a definition of self-care. If you're actually self-caring, self-loving, self-compassionate, you will accept everything that's good for you and reject everything that's not. And it's like, oh, so that's where it is, if you're wondering where it is. But I had another realization. And, Prabhupada sometimes says, your real self-interest is Vishnu. Or I heard a lecture the other day, Prabhupada said, if you actually care about yourself, you should do this. You should do it. So then I thought, people are saying, what verse? Where's the verse? And I'll say, how many verses in Bhagavatam? They'll say 18,000. I go, yeah, 18,000 verses, self-care. Because every verse is telling you to love Krishna, which is in your highest self-interest, right?
Yeah.
Every verse. So to me, it's like every verse is self-care. And if you don't think Krishna's talking about self-care, well, look at it this way. But then I started talking about self-love, and people are like, whoa, Mahatma's like over the deep end now. And if you go on the folio, database, you might find maybe 2 references to self-love. But where I got it from is because Prabhupada kept talking about self-hatred. Like you do something which is detrimental to your spiritual life, so you're acting against your own interest. You could go back to Godhead, but instead you go to hell, and you made that choice. So Prabhupada said, that's self-hatred, like self-violence. And I thought, well, what's the opposite of self-hatred? It must be self-love. So Prabhupada's talking about, don't do this, take to Krishna consciousness, that's in your best interest. Well, okay, so if I take to Krishna consciousness, then I'm loving myself in the highest way because that's my highest good. And if I give it up, then I'm basically hating myself. So I had written articles about this. I had thought about this a lot. And if you just study the nature of the mind, it's either obviously your friend or enemy. And so the real problem is us. It's and 11th Canto Bhagavatam says, you can say this and that is the problem, but the problem is this. It's just your own mind is the problem. So, okay, if my own mind's the problem, that means self-care means I control it. And then I had a beautiful realization that if I care about myself, I cannot allow myself to do anything which would hurt me. I can't bring myself to do that. So you like something and it's really bad for you. And it's your temptation, it's the carrot in front of you. And if you thought, I want to do this, but I know this is bad for me and I know this would create problems in my life, I can't do that to myself. I care too much about myself to do that. So that was just kind of like my realization that I was getting from preparing the course. And then during that time, I think it was actually after I prepared the course, and I had gotten very much into this, how would your life be better if you had more self-care? And people would make lists of like 20 things that would improve in their life if they cared about themselves more. It's like an amazing exercise. You just think like, I'm doing A, B, and C. If I cared more for myself, would I do that? No way. I wouldn't. I'm not doing D, E, and F. Would I do it if I cared more about myself? Yes, I would. So then I'm listening. The disciple of mine, he's worked with addiction for like 20, 30 years. He's a professor. He teaches counseling on the PhD level. So he knows what he's talking about. So he was doing a talk on addiction. And I'm listening to the talk, in the middle of the talk, and he says, and one of the methods of overcoming addiction is self-care. I'm like, wait a minute. Self-care is that powerful that, not only can it stop you from a temptation, it can break you free of an addiction. Mm-hmm. It's like, wow. I care so much about myself, I cannot live another day like this. So when self-care reaches a certain threshold, everything changes. And a lot of the problems we have can be boiled down to the fact that I don't care enough about myself. It's not like I can't do it, or I have my reasons, it's my past and this and that. A lot of times it's just you don't care enough about yourself. You're allowing yourself to go down. That's simple. I didn't know all this when I started the course, but it all became clear by teaching it.
I had a question regarding this, as I'm just having flashbacks as a brahmachari way back.
Neglecting yourself.
Well, see, it was just really diving into spiritual life and thinking, yeah, I'm doing the best, the ultimate thing for myself,
Okay.
diving into as much, but I found myself overdoing it.
Welcome to the club.
So how
Well,
to
we were
stay
all
balanced?
brahmacharis. Yeah, we were all brahmacharis. Well, the answer to that question is the leaders need to be balanced, because a good leader wouldn't let you burn yourself out.
Yeah.
So a lot of these questions, devotees said, how do I know this and how do I not do that? I said, your leader should be telling you these things. Your leader should be guiding you. So that's part of the problem. So now you have to fend for yourself, and everyone's telling you, just surrender and do what you're told.
Yeah.
And that's what Krishna wants. So then it gets to the point where, like, well, the glory of surrender is to burn yourself out in Krishna's service.
Right.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Because that's surrender.
That's what I experienced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how many people have burned themselves out of ISKCON and Bhakti, right? In the name is they surrendered themselves right out the door,
Right.
right? Because
Yeah.
they bit off more than they can chew in the name of devotion. So as less of a practical answer, more of a philosophical answer, you can only surrender. This is going to be a very profound statement. Hold on, everybody, listen. You can only surrender as much as you can surrender. Yeah, right? Like, you can't, if you try to surrender more than you can surrender, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so that's the problem, that we're lifting more weight than we can, and we're pulling muscles.
Related to that, I like the point that you made about how tattva is very black and white. But if you don't have someone nuanced explaining the nuances, that could cause so much havoc.
Oh.
I mean,
Yeah.
what you're talking about is also like that as well.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
as a brahmachari, you're told certain things, you're told the tattva, but how you,
I
what
have
the nuance.
nightmares. I have nightmares about this. 'Cause sometimes I hear classes and I'm like, someone needs to talk to this devotee. This is not right. As you know, a lot of times when we're teaching, it's a reflection of our own consciousness. And some devotees like really strict, and so he's interpreting everything as strict. He's every story about Prabhupada is when Prabhupada chastised somebody, So it's obvious that's his nature. And Prabhupada is very kind and very open and very loving, and he didn't chastise us. So that's their nature. And it's really the job of the teacher to be able to see all sides and not let your nature and preferences and prejudices get in the way, because then it's like almost like your class is autobiographical in a sense. And if we don't understand Prabhupada in 360 degrees, then we're going to mislead people, because we'll just give them a partial Prabhupada, which is the side we're partial to. And that, I think, is a great disservice. So these are the things I stay up at night about how easy it is to misunderstand in your immature years of Krishna consciousness. Even sometimes in your mature years, if you're not like a little introspective to understand, well, what I'm saying is maybe biased a little bit by my own preferences. And it's maybe not actually the complete picture.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a responsibility of those who are teachers to present everything, of all sides, as Prabhupada did.
I mean, we were taught, like, Prabhupada's there in the books and you just read the books.
Yeah.
But even on top of that, there needs to be someone to explain some of the
Yeah.
nuance to you, right?
Yeah. Why do you need a guru? You just read the books.
Right.
So beautiful to have a guru who represents Prabhupada, who can elaborate on it.
Yes.
And so, I mean, sometimes I read Shastra and I think, how many devotees are really understanding this as it's meant to be understood?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of stuff is culturally contextual. And we don't always know the culture. So then now we're looking at it from the eyes of our culture. So in our culture, it means this. And then like 10 years later, you read a commentary by Vishwanath Chakravarti, or you hear some devotee explain this and say, well, the reason this is stated in the Bhagavatam, because in that culture, it's like this, this, and this, and it means this and this. And you realize, oh, I was completely wrong. I didn't know that context. So, that's a little bit of a handicap and challenge. I just read something recently. I was doing some research. Can a guru reject a disciple? And everyone says, yeah, well, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he says, the disciple, this and that, you can reject him. And I was thinking, is it true? So I've asked somebody, I got the verse, and then I asked Rita Namarasa, I think maybe asked someone else, what does this verse mean? And the word that was translated as reject is like shastra, which means discipline. Correct. It doesn't mean reject. So,
Oh, wow.
and everybody quotes that verse because it was translated as reject, but the word is shastra. It's not, varjanam or whatever the word for reject is.
Yeah.
Varjanam, giving up. It was shastra, discipline. And that really disturbed me because there's so many books out there that are being translated, and if one word is mistranslated or you choose this meaning to this word rather than that, then everybody's off on this one idea that this is what it means, and it's not what it means. And everybody's giving class on this is what it means, and it's out of context. Like that statement, what is a question of the mind? Just chant with your tongue and hear with your ear. So it's a contextual statement, and it's almost like Prabhupada was just being sarcastic. Says the devotee said, Prabhupada, it's so hard to control the mind, and we might say, forget your mind, just chant here, like who cares about your mind? It was like kind of like that.
Yeah.
But everyone takes that, this is the ultimate tattva. This is how you chant, and that's it. It just stops there. It has nothing to do with your mood, your internal prayer. It's just you just hear.
Yeah.
And so that's not what he meant. Then later Prabhupada said, hear yourself chanting sincerely. Oh, there's another element to this. It's not just a technical chant and hear. There's an internal environment you have to cultivate. Chanting is a prayer. And there's this whole world of how to develop the right mood. But so many people, when they teach japa, they'll just chant and hear. And without even recognizing the context, it was, 50% in jest. I mean, it's true, because Prabhupada does say chant and hear. But he was saying, your crazy mind, just forget about it. Don't worry about your mind. Like that. So it's, we need teachers who go deep, who are very balanced people. And we need students to learn well and understand their limitations. And, it's a big job understanding Bhagavatam.
Yeah.
I'm hearing also, what I'm hearing in the background, you're describing a teacher is not only that they're balanced, but they're caring. I experienced this from you. You're very caring, and I'm hearing you're saying these problems are kind of keeping me up. So I'm hearing you're caring about the people, and you're caring about Prabhupada's movement. How can more of us come to that level of really not only caring about ourselves, but caring about the other devotees and caring about Prabhupada's movement?
Well, Prabhupada's movement is valuable. And we want to keep it valuable. And we care about it. And I personally think every person who comes to ISKCON is like coming into Prabhupada's house. So if someone's coming into your father's house or your grandfather's house, and he's entrusted you to take care of them and represent him and treat them the way he would treat them, or the way he wants you to treat them, then that's my job, to represent him. And if he's compassionate, I have to represent that compassion, even if I'm not. And better I feel that compassion if I can, because I'm feeling his desire. But even if I can't, I have to represent it. And I've seen, on occasions in my travels, I've seen devotees distraught because they've been mistreated. And I really take that seriously, to try to mend any problem and help them, and perhaps explain why the person who mistreated them did, or just sympathize and say, no, that was wrong. You've been mistreated. And you should act appropriately to regain your stability and so forth. and move forward. And so I try to help them. I feel that's my duty, because that's what Prabhupada would want. And not every person who's asked to be a leader is good at it. A lot of people do it because no one else will do it. When you're asked to be a guru, you don't have much training. You're learning to swim by jumping in the water. So even a guru may sometimes in his earlier years misunderstand a disciple or misunderstand his own duty. And sometimes the guru might say something that disturbs the disciple. And we come across that and they're upset. And so I feel like, well, it's my obligation to patch it together. That's what Prabhupada would want me to do. And I think a teacher should pray for his students. I think that should be part of the job. You don't just teach, but you pray. Because just like we're talking with Bhagavatam, how do you understand Bhagavatam? It's through your purity and through mercy. You can't just understand it just by reading it. So, teacher can pray. I pray that my students get the mercy to understand this. Right? Because if they misunderstand, I failed as a teacher. And I failed to represent the Shastra and the Gurus and the Sadhus and Prabhupada especially. And that, you imagine going back to Godhead and Prabhupada saying, why didn't you represent me properly? You heard somebody said this, why didn't you correct it? So now it's your offense, you didn't say anything. You knew this was going on, why didn't you do something? I always think what's Prabhupada going to say to me when I go back? I got to do all this. So when I go back, he's like, good job. Not like, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you say that? Why didn't you protect this person? That's how I think.
Yeah, something just coming up for me is regarding guru-disciple relationship is that I don't know if this is how disciples think now, but when I first took Diksha, it was offensive to bring up issues with your own guru. Such as you're saying, if somebody gets hurt, you being a guru, would that be an issue if somebody brought up hey, you said something that hurt me, I would like to talk about it?
Yeah. Me personally, I would definitely want them to talk about it, because if they don't, it's going to fester into a problem. Right. So anyone who aspires to be my disciple, I have documents I send them, and in those documents it says, if you have a problem with me, please tell me. And this has happened several times. Sometimes it's just misunderstandings, and somebody thinks you said something that you didn't. Or sometimes you said something and you realize, I shouldn't have said that, and you apologize. I've had to apologize several times. And I could see that apology was all they needed, and everything was okay. Wow. I've had to accept disciples' behavior that was not really the way it should have been, but it was the best they could do, and I saw that acceptance saved them, because they thought I was going to reject them. So, you basically want the disciple to continue to go on. Now, someone could say, well, that's not the traditional guru-disciple role, that the disciple's going to go, hey, Guru Dev, what you said, I don't agree with that. That's wrong. One time, I had allowed a devotee to be part of, you could say, the Sangha when I was in Mayapur for a week. We go on walks and we have classes. And that devotee sexually mistreated a woman. And that woman called me, who at that time she was an aspiring disciple. She said, why did you allow him to be in your Sangha? And then another disciple who had been sexually abused when she was young called me and said, why did you allow them? They were upset. They had a lot of affection for me, but they were upset.
That same person for both of them?
Yeah, it was the same event. So I asked my wife, I said, what should I do? In a nanosecond, she said, apologize. That wasn't right. You shouldn't have allowed him. And I said, I didn't really think.
You probably didn't know.
I wasn't thinking, I was not trained like that.
Right.
And then I apologized, and they both, of course, accepted it, and it helped them. And next year he came, when I was in Mayapur. I think he lives there, and he came, and I said, I'm really sorry, but I can't. This is, So he accepted it. He understood, but we don't always realize how our behavior can affect people, or just, I chastise a disciple who is very, very sensitive, and that, then they go away. And the chastisement was very good, if they could take it. So we have to be sensitive. So if we want to make it black and white, the guru's heavy, he's always right, the disciple just does what he says, it's not going to work for everybody, and we're going to lose people. And is the guru infallible? Does he make mistakes? Is he materially perfect? No, he's not. Does he make? He could. The guru says, we should go this way, and you say, oh no, that's not the way home. The way home is this. Oh, okay, I didn't know. Did you say nothing? Or my famous one, I don't know, it's not famous. Maybe it'll become famous now. It's on the podcast. The guru, sometimes we hear the statement, if you see a snake and the guru says it's a rope, then you accept it's a rope. Or you see a rope and he says it's a snake, you accept it's a snake. So my question is, well, if it's a cobra heading for your guru to bite him and your guru says it's a rope, you just say, oh, okay, Gurudev, it's a rope. And the rope is going, shh, shh, shh. No, you say, Gurudev, come, it's a snake. Run it, So you disagree with your guru. You don't follow that principle. You lack faith. Yeah, but you just saved the guru's life. And he says, thank you. You saved my life. And if you would have believed him that it was a rope, he might have been killed.
Weren't there instances of when disciples talk to Srila Prabhupada, he would actually change his mind on things also?
Yeah.
So what kind of worries me is that we've kind of frozen Srila Prabhupada in some ways. Like if you read a letter or you read a conversation, I'm not talking about the books. The books are frozen, and that's for a good reason. But I'm saying when you're going by the conversation or a letter and you just freeze it like that, when you can say like, oh, well, Prabhupada, it's actually like this, and he'd be like, yeah, I mean, if you're giving me some evidence of that something's different, then it could be like that. Or
and common sense has to reign supreme in many cases. But the argument, and I think it's a valid argument, at least generally, is that we're not here to ask him. So we can make assumptions, right? I think okay, right. If everyone in ISKCON agreed that if we asked Prabhupada this, he would say it, maybe we could say, okay, we're going to change this.
Yeah,
you know? But even if everyone agreed, I think we'd still say, but he never said that.
Yes.
And this could be, this seems very foundational, what Prabhupada said. Can we change it? And there could be debate on that. As I've discussed this with devotees, and some things seem like, oh, we really need to change this. This is going nowhere. But you can't, because this is how Prabhupada did it. Yeah. So, yes, we could sit down with Prabhupada, and we could say ABC, and we could assume, he would say, yeah, that I agree with that, let's change it. But you can't prove it. You can't do it, Mm-hmm. Like I think this is my thing. If it were true that some statements in Prabhupada's books were keeping people away from ISKCON, and these are not foundational statements, they're more like social statements about ethnic groups or race, gender. And say, Prabhupada, people are reading, women are reading this, or people of this race are reading this, and they're not joining because of that one statement, because it's offending them, they don't understand it, the political context of the world is such. And I anticipate if this continues, in the next 10,000 years, there could be millions of people that would have become devotees that won't, just because of this one statement. Would you consider taking this out of the book? And I would think Prabhupada, if he were convinced it was preventing people from becoming devotees, he would just say, yes, it's not that important. But and maybe everyone in ISKCON would be convinced of that. But to take it out of the book, that's a big no-no, right?
Right.
Some devotees say 16 rounds, 4 principles. It's like most people can't do it. You have to change it. How do you change it when Prabhupada gave that standard?
Yeah.
You could say, well, look at it. People are saying they're going to chant 16 and they end up chanting 4. And we're just, Brahman means truthful, and we're making them lie. This is not good. Or four principle. Well, what do you mean by the fourth principle? What's no illicit sex? What are they vowing to do? Disagreement on that.
Right.
And say, so Prabhupada, couldn't they just try to chant 16 but vow to chant 4 and just keep sex and marriage? Then they don't have to lie. So that's an argument with some people. And the other side of the argument is no, because Prabhupada gave 16 and 4. So if you want initiation, that's what you have to pay for. So that's the argument. He's not here. And so there's just a lot of things we can't change. When our generation is gone and your generation takes over, you might have a little more freedom to discuss these things, because we would definitely have a lot of guilt about it, because we feel like as the disciples, we're inheriting the mission. And so we don't want to change much.
I wouldn't want to change. I wouldn't want to change anything. I think it wouldn't be our generation. I think it'd be even farther.
Oh, okay.
Because we're so in touch with your generation, who is directly connected with Srila Prabhupada, that, I mean,
I feel the same way.
Yeah, it just wouldn't feel right.
Oh, well, that's good to know. I didn't know that. I thought you guys were going to...
I mean, I'm a little, I mean, I don't, how old are you, Prabhu?
47.
47. Okay, I'm about 10 years younger than you.
Yeah, 37.
Yeah, 30, I'm 38, so.
I always thought your generation was going to make it or break it. Because the burden... One of the reasons I thought that is there's a lot of things that GBC is... I think they are a little reluctant to deal with because it's so difficult, and it's almost like, let the next generation deal with it. And you guys will look at it and go, why didn't they deal with it? Why they this is really hard. They're more capable. But I think there will be things like that just like they're not getting resolved, and new things come up all the time, new situations.
In regards to like statements that maybe people won't join, isn't it also that sometimes people will try to find an excuse not to?
That can be there also.
Like they'll magnify something that's totally, it's like you said, it's like a social, it's a social statement. It's not.
That can be there. That can be there. But at the same time, we have to look at social context. If someone's raised in a certain way, to believe a certain way, and especially now the way the world is going, it's all about equal rights and so forth. To read in a scripture that women are this and men are this, is that even true? Like, women are less intelligent than men. Like, which men? Like men, 5,000 years ago? Okay, right. Maybe the men were different then. Maybe the men were brilliant. Maybe the women were less intelligent. And what does less intelligent mean? Does it mean more sense-controlled? Are men more sense-controlled than women? In many cases, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
Maybe 5,000 years ago, that men were men, so men were sense-controlled. Today, not all men are men. So, so some of those statements are a little problematic when they're spoken at a time when they were true that maybe not so true now, or true in a different way, or that people who quote them, people who read them, have no context. It's just, oh, you're saying we have low IQ and you want to dominate us. And it's like, I don't want to be part of a movement, misogynistic movement. So you can't, necessarily blame them for thinking that way. They're just like innocent, and everything else they like.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have to be sensitive to that, for sure. And a lot of devotees who are very successful, if you ask them, well, what do you say about this issue? They'll just say, we steer clear of it. It's just too sticky to try to explain it, And we just, in our culture, the women feel cared for, protected. They don't feel minimized in any way. And that's the best thing you can do. So then if they do read that in the future, it won't resonate. It won't make sense to them because it's not how they're treated. And
right.
So it won't bother them so much.
Like the devotees who I've heard explain it to other devotees who ask about it, they say, okay, it says that, but the way Srila Prabhupada treated, whether it was women or whoever it was completely different than the way it was written in the book.
So if women are treated that way and then they read it, then It's not going to
Then
bother
it's-
them because
yeah.
it's not part of the. It must say it must mean something else. But if they're reading it before they have that experience, and that could be the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Yeah.
Radhika. Was it Radhika, the professor?
Radhika Raman.
Yeah. He said that young people will look at religion and they'll evaluate the value of religion based on how it can help the world. So they'll look at gender issues and social issues. They'll look at ecological issues. And so, if that's true, we have to be sensitive to that when people are making their decision on being devotees, that might be very important for them when they look at our movement. How do they treat their women? How do they treat other races? How are they stewards of the planet?
Right.
I think there may be one other thing that he mentioned, but it's an interesting question. If you look at every religion of the world and think, if everyone in the world followed this religion, what would the world be like? And I think we would come out way on top on this one. And I think it's a powerful point. Say, look at our religion, look at Christianity, Islam, look at all the religions, and imagine everyone in the world followed the principles of those religions, or everyone lived like your average Hare Krishna, your average Christian, your average Muslim. What would the world be like? So, it's a good question for us, because how do we want to live our lives? How are we living our lives? Are we aligned with what Prabhupada wanted? If everyone in the world lived like me, how would the world be? That's important question.
Like if we're all striving to live off the land or cow protection or whatever the main principles are.
Yeah, right.
Did you have anything else on this point before I move on?
No.
Okay. I wanted to talk a little bit about, in the past few years, there's been events in our society which were challenging for a lot of devotees, whether it was child abuse or other things, and there was crisis of faith with a lot of devotees.
Yes.
So what would you say? How can we, go beyond the crisis of faith, or even how can we help those who have gone through such thing in ISKCON?
Well, as you probably know, I lived through the original changing of the guard after Prabhupada left.
Oh yeah, that's such an interesting time.
And the gradual fall of a number of people we thought were faultless and infallible. And what we observed was, after one or two fell, disciples of gurus who had not fallen, who were very strict, were losing faith in their guru. Because it kind of cracked an illusion maybe in their mind that my guru is infallible. And I saw that and I thought, this is extremely unfortunate, because their guru has done nothing wrong and probably will never do anything wrong, but they're losing faith in him because another guru failed. And so I just saw that it's like natural. That's like natural psychology, one of the leaders failed, and my guru is a leader, so is he next? I thought they were all infallible, so that means he could fall also.
Yeah.
So faith is obviously minimized when any leader has trouble, because it sheds shadows on all leaders. So what I would say to someone who's having a crisis of faith is, it's good to understand that there may not be a problem outside that sphere where this person had difficulty or the organization in that part of the world failed. It may not be universal. And it's something to consider. There's many things to think about, and I always think about what I need to preserve my Krishna consciousness. And then how jumping to certain conclusions about certain people and situations could actually backfire on me. And I may end up damaging myself, assuming things about people who maybe are faultless, but it just seems like because they were close to a fault, maybe they're also part of the problem, and maybe they're not. We don't know. So, as we know, the problem with social media is there's no editors. It's just whatever you think you put up.
Yeah.
And then therefore you might believe things that aren't true.
Yeah.
Right? And actually you want to believe what kind of fits in your picture of what's going on. And I think everyone needs to understand how their own consciousness works and how we make assumptions. And naturally, as human beings, we make assumptions. This happened, therefore it must be this, because every time this happens and this happens, it always ends up like this. But it doesn't mean this time it ended up like that. It's just an assumption. And if you don't have factual evidence and you jump to that conclusion, then you post it on social media and someone reads it, and in their mind they have evidence because you said it. Isn't it? Isn't that how it works?
Yeah.
Well, this is what I think. Well, he said it, so it must be true. So at least if we understand the process of how we're getting information and how we can jump to conclusions, that's a little helpful, because we may jump to conclusions that undermine our faith. And then, really, to be a devotee, all you have is faith. Like if you lose that, then it's it. It's gone. It's all built on faith. When some of these gurus were leaving ISKCON, devotees started going to Srila Sridhar Maharaj because it was such a confusing time. They didn't, know, are these really gurus, and so on and so forth. And it was difficult for us as godbrothers, to help the disciples develop faith in their guru. Because we're also thinking, well, he fell, maybe he's next. It was the same for us.
Wow.
And Sridhar Maharaj said something that helped me. He said that our duty is always to help the disciple increase their faith in their guru. Because we were doing a good job at telling people, your guru is bogus. Not all of us did that, and we weren't so blunt. But we kind of felt that for some of them, and some devotees just expressed it,
Yeah.
It was a very tense time. And he said, no, your job is to always help a disciple increase their faith in their guru, unless you have evidence that their guru is not qualified. That's a different thing. But if you don't have direct evidence, it's just that, well, he came back at 10:30 last night, he must have been out at, with his girlfriend. Well, how do you know what he was doing? He could have been at the, at the BBT sorting out, shipments or something or whatever, right? So, so I found that very, very meaningful, So we have the capacity to destroy faith, right? By what we say, or what we publish on social media and so forth. And if we destroy faith, we are doing the greatest harm and injustice to the devotee community, I think. Now, if someone has committed an offense and someone is in a position for which they're not qualified, that's different. Because it's like, this is clear. This has been proven. It's not an assumption. It's not hearsay. This is it. That's different. But that's him. It's not every sannyasi. That's him. It's not every guru. And that's where we run into trouble. Like, oh, well, he fell and nobody caught him after he fell, so the whole system's corrupt. Well, like, how did we know? Nobody said anything. It was done undercover. He never told his friends. How are we to know? Right? Maybe if there were better systems in place, I don't know what they would be. But, so sometimes some things are not preventable. Or, some devotees would say, well, we did talk to him, but he didn't listen. But, who knows that when we talked to him? Why did they allow him to do this? No, we talked to him. But you may not know that. And so, It's just, I think we just need to be careful in how we deal with these issues so that we can maintain faith in people, not faith, unrealistically, but faith where faith should be placed. And we shouldn't, obviously, we don't want to cover up anything so people have faith where they shouldn't. That has to be exposed. But, you could make assumption that, well, that was just a cover-up, and they were trying to protect him. Not necessarily true, but there may be other things that were true, that maybe he should have been punished more, and he wasn't. I think that's true, for sure. And, so there's a failure in leadership. And what can we do?
Social media definitely aggravates things, and it's not always correct, or
Yeah. And sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. It's not always easy to tell.
yeah.
And, we have messed up big time. And it's just a fact. So it doesn't mean the whole organization is corrupt, but it does mean we need to improve. And I think if you look at ISKCON from a historical perspective, as much as we messed up is probably, as far as I understand, a lot less than other religious movements. At this juncture in their history, they messed up a lot more.
Yeah.
And these things are expected. And it's good to know that. It's not an excuse for it, but it's good to know that it'll happen. And I think the worst thing that we can do is do nothing. And if we're trying to do something, then, what can you do? You realize you made a mistake. You should have been better, but you weren't. And so, okay, we made a mistake, admit it, and improve it. And then the problem we're having in the world today is that the GBC doesn't tell us everything they're doing. So then we're meant to assume they're not doing anything.
Yeah.
We're posting, why aren't they doing anything? What's wrong with them? They should all retire, this and that. Yeah, they probably should, but not necessarily that's the reason, because they're doing nothing.
Yeah.
But it's just that we don't know what they're doing because they're not telling us, and that feeds in a little frenzy. And it feeds in this assumption, because you have to assume they're not doing anything because there's no publicity that they did anything. So what are they doing about child abuse? What are they doing about this situation? I don't know. It sounds like they're doing nothing.
The lack of communication in
Yeah.
any relationship is just, it's a weak relationship. There's a problem there.
And
Great
in my service, I know what they're doing, and so I'm not all flustered and like, oh, no, I know what they're doing. There's a plan here. And if they don't go forward with the plan, I'm in a position where I can say, why didn't you do it? I can, I'm part of a body that can push them. And so for me, it's different. I'm not, but for the average devotee, how would they know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea what the GBC
So
is doing.
it's understandable. So, but I would say to everyone, before you make any assumption, you may want to find out. Before you say the GBC is doing nothing,
Check in.
find out if that's actually true. And if it is true, then you can say that, and you can ask for action, and that's helpful.
I had another question regarding faith and it's a crisis in faith. On the other spectrum, the other end of the spectrum, if somebody has been abused, in some way, or something harsh, drastic, abusive.
Talking about an adult.
Yeah, an adult, and it really rocks their faith. Well, I guess my question is how to be ready for something to come that's heavy, so it doesn't rock our faith.
Could you give an example of something that would happen to rock your faith?
Yeah, I mean, you could lose a child, or a woman could be raped. Family member murdered, or something
By a devotee.
Yeah, even by a
That's what you're
devotee.
talking about,
Yeah, I mean.
Oh, you mean faith in Krishna, that you lose your faith in Krishna because he allowed
Right.
this to happen.
I'm seeing a lot of some of this.
Yeah, that is definitely a big issue.
Yeah.
It's a real faith challenger.
Yeah.
Because you can't just say, "Oh, karma," and then that's it.
Yeah.
Not everyone wants to hear that.
Yeah. That's the easy way out.
Right.
I can tell you how I see it for myself, which is not always how I would tell someone to see it because it depends on the person and the situation. But when something bad happens to a devotee, sometimes they're confused that I'm a devotee and why is this happening? And the answer, the general answer is, well, you're in the material world, so there are possibilities that these things will happen. We're not immune from them just because we're devotees. And I think that's important to understand. When you come to the material world, these are the liabilities. And so you may be affected by them. But the interesting thing is that throughout the Gita, Krishna is teaching us not to be disturbed by the dualities of this world. And I think if there's any teaching in the Gita that we fail at royally, that's the teaching. Because it's all over the Gita. And in my work in helping devotees, that's one of the main things I have to help them with, their reactions to the difficulties in this world. The inability to tolerate it, the inability to maintain stability in the light of the difficulties and the situations like you're describing in their life. And I look at those teachings and I feel like these teachings are gold, because Krishna is saying, if you're being pushed around by happiness and distress, good and bad, you're not really ready for spiritual life. You're not a candidate for liberation. You're a candidate for another body. That's really what he's saying. And then I think, well, if we look at these instructions and all the instructions Krishna is giving us, we could say Krishna is preparing us to be able to tolerate the dualities in life, all those instructions and all those practices. That's what he's preparing us to do. And so when they finally come and we fail and we break down, it's like, what happened? I thought that's the whole name of the game, is to learn how to remain stable in duality. And I think a lot of us maybe just forget that, or don't understand it well, or don't think it's possible, or just, I don't know what, but there's so many instructions about that. It's like those instructions are hard to miss, so it's kind of interesting how we miss them. At least that's how I see it. So it's like when those difficulties come, I personally think, okay, so now it's test time. The dualities have come. What's my reaction? Do I break down in anger or distress, despair? The good comes, am I overwhelmed? I think, there's no problem in the world, So it's a huge test, and a huge test of faith in Krishna. If you expect Krishna's going to make everything just easy and nice, then you might be let down. You ever broken a bone?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did that shake your faith in Krishna, or did you realize you did something stupid?
2 broken bones I have were before I became an aspiring devotee. So that wasn't...
Did you lose your faith in God?
No, I didn't. Actually, both of them were my stupidity. I took accountability for that.
So if we break a bone or something because we're playing a sport or whatever, we know it's like,
Yeah.
we don't blame God. Right. When bigger things happen that seem maybe more out of our control, we blame him. But I think it's better if we just thought, I'm in the material world.
Yeah.
I'm subjected to the possibility of all kinds of horrible things happening.
I appreciate that. It's like, Yeah, when when I was a teenager, I was playing a game, a dangerous game. I broke something. But when I'm an adult, I'm playing in a dangerous place. Yeah, I like that.
Always. And then devotees often, in distressful situations, will use those situations to come closer to Krishna. And some devotees are amazing, where it doesn't faze them at all. It's just like, whatever. This is Krishna. Like they accept it as Krishna's will. The good is his will, the bad is his will. They take it that way. That's a very elevated position. You can't imitate it, but what's the option? Lose faith, blame him, become angry. When devotees ask me about these things, I often think that it's probably you needed something to push you a little bit, to shake you up. And maybe this was part of your karma, and Krishna decided not to dissolve this part because he felt, if you go through this, it'll be good for you. And so my little story here, my little joke is, when you go back to Godhead and you have this doubt, Krishna, I just tried to be your devotee, but this happened. Like, how is it that you allowed this to happen? And Krishna says, because if it didn't happen, you wouldn't be here today. You'd still be down there thinking everything's cool. So I always have this little drama going on in my mind where, I go back to Godhead and ask Krishna, what about this? What about that? And, I tried so hard to serve you, and I really wanted to do this, and it never happened. And Krishna's just giving you the answer. If I would have let you do that, you would have just been completely enamored by it. You wouldn't be able to handle it.
Yeah.
Why didn't I have this beautiful angel wife who just did whatever I said? He said, because if you did, you'd be taking birth again.
Right.
Because you'd be so attached.
Yeah.
So I gave you a wife. It's like you were glad to die. so to speak. Some people are in marriages like that.
Right.
Dying is going to be a relief.
It's my only way out.
Right.
So, it's nice. It's nice to think like that, I'm trying to do my best and make everything good, but it always seemed to go this way and not that way. And why? Krishna, why? I said, because that's how I got you out of this world.
That's such a profound point. I love that.
Yeah, me too.
It can't be any other way, can it?
Yeah.
Krishna wouldn't want something to happen that's not good for you.
It's also, I'm hearing you're saying it's happiness because for spiritual reasons, because we're a spiritual being, and we're not material beings. We're not, so the stuff that happens to us materially, it's really for our spiritual benefit. Yeah.
I look at my life and I look at things that could have happened that didn't. Which I thought would be better materially. And I always think it must not have been my karma for that, because no matter how things lined up and they were going this way, it always blocked. It always got blocked and always got pushed this way. Just something which was it was okay, but that was better. But it was I just felt no, that's not going to happen. It's not in the stars for you in this life. That's not what I want for you. It's okay. So if we see it that way, maybe your job's not perfect, your marriage is not, but this is not perfect, your kids aren't perfect. And and so it's a bit of a struggle. It requires a little more patience, a little more tolerance, and so forth. And I just think, I guess that's what Krishna wants from me right now. Because this is just how it's going. No matter how much I try to make it go the other way, it's not. And so I accept it. Okay. And once you accept it, and you're okay with it. At that point, you're oh, this is fine. This is perfect. This is just what I needed.
The struggle stops.
Yeah. And the purification is obvious.
Yeah, I love that. we are taught of, 16 rounds and 4 regulated principles, but something that I always have a hard time with is prayer. That like we hear, the Bhagavatam is just full of prayers, but how we should pray is something that's like very unknown to me in some ways. And I know you do a seminar, and you've written books on it that we'll talk about after, but could you kind of give us a, cliff notes on your seminar and what do you talk about when you talk about prayer?
Well, I like devotees to develop their own prayers.
Yeah.
Because your own prayers are relevant to your own situation. And if you're aspiring for something or aspiring to move away from something, if you say a prayer, it empowers you as an individual to be more determined to, just by saying, I want this. Even if it wasn't a prayer, if you just said, I want this and I don't want that, it empowers those statements. It reinforces them by speaking them in words, and you hear them. And you can try this. Anytime you want to focus on achieving something, just say, I want to do this. And anytime you want to move away from something that might be getting in the way of that, just say, I don't want to do this. And you realize, oh, that's like kind of reinforcing, re-energizing what I don't want and what I do want. So when you pray, you're energizing that thing you're praying for. You're bringing it to your consciousness. Like, I want this. Oh, Krishna, help me. And not only you're energizing it by your words, you're involving Krishna. So now Krishna knows, oh, this is what I want. So now we've got partnership here.
It's important to outwardly say it.
Yeah. Because I often say, and I think this is an accurate understanding, there's so many things we want. So like when you were talking to Raja Bihari, is that his name?
Yeah, Raja Bihari, yeah.
You're saying, why do we need to pray if Krishna already knows?
Yeah.
All right, you have 100 desires, so which one does Krishna choose? You better tell him.
Right.
This is the one I want. This is important. And Krishna goes, okay, let me write that one down. So Krishna consciousness we're working with the Supersoul Chaitya Guru. So we need to inform him, just like you write in an address in a GPS, we need to inform Krishna, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. And so it helps Krishna give you guidance, and it helps you reinforce your own intention. So you have this idea of goal setting and making intentions, but I think every prayer is a goal. It's a goal setting. It's really goal setting. It's intention making. And then if we look at prayer, like you're saying, the Shastras are full of prayers. Look at prayers. So many prayers are just stating our aspirations. This is what I want. This is what I need. Please help me with this. And it's a beautiful way to connect with Krishna. It's a process. It's the fourth process, right? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Bandhanam. Praying. So it's a process. And it's a process of, it causes you to look at, well, what am I going to, I say, pray, Namarasa, pray. Like, what do I pray for? Well, you have to answer that question. Like what's important to you right now? What do you want? And if you're praying for nothing, then I guess you're going nowhere, because there's no real ambition there. Where Krishna, please help me. I want to do this service. I need empowerment. I need intelligence. I need resources. I don't know how to get them. I'm depending on you. Please help. So now that's on the forefront of your mind. You've put it out. You're kind of waiting for Krishna. You're looking. But one thing I discovered that's a really beautiful way to pray is pray as if it's already happening. It's like it's already, like you make the prayer and you know Krishna's going to do it, because that is a prayer with faith. It's like, Krishna, I trust you. This is what I want to do. This is my service. I know when I'm ready for it, you will give it. Because if you don't pray that way, you may pray out of fear. And fear is, Krishna, I need this, and if I don't get this, I don't know what I'm going to do. So it's like, are you going to give it or not? Because if you don't, it's not fair. I'm your devotee, and I don't know what to do. I think it's better to pray in faith, because I've always seen Krishna reciprocate with faith, not with fear. Fear is like, I don't believe. Fear is the absence of Krishna, so I don't believe you going to give this to me. So I'm begging you, like desperate. I have to have this. As opposed to Krishna, this is my goal, this is my desire. I know it's already in the bag. I'm just expressing it. I have faith. And that's faith in, that's another item of surrender, faith in his protection.
Right. That's a far out distinction.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you miss the mark. I'm praying, but I'm praying in fear, as you're saying, or in anxiety, like, I don't know if it's going to come.
Is Krishna going to do this or not?
Yeah, and then it's like you're not in the right mood. It doesn't really fructify, or it doesn't have the really result you want.
And if you're in the mood of, I know you will give this when I'm qualified, then that would, if it doesn't come, then it's like, I need to be more qualified for Krishna. He doesn't think I'm ready for this. But you're my protector, you're my maintainer, you're the fulfiller of all desire. So my prayer is like, I already know, it's just a matter of time before it will come. And as you expect and as you see that, then Krishna likes to reciprocate. That's my experience. He also likes to reciprocate with your doubts by not giving it to you because you doubt that he will.
Right. And I guess if it doesn't come too, you can pray, could you please make me qualified?
Yeah, exactly. Show me what I need to do to be qualified for this. And so being qualified and having faith is huge. And I think a lot of times we pray and our faith is that it's not going to happen. Because I prayed before and it didn't happen, so I'm praying out of desperation, but I don't believe it'll happen. Krishna says, okay, you don't believe it'll happen. Okay, I'll fulfill that. We're not going to make it happen. Because that's what you expect. So if that's what you expect of me, that's what I'll give you. And we don't understand what's happening.
As a conclusion, Prabhu, what do you want the Vaishnav community to know in 2024? I love putting devotees on the spot with this question, but what's your sutra for the
Vaishnav
concluding?
community to know? Oh my God. You didn't tell me you were going to ask me that question.
Whatever comes to you at this
It's
moment.
kind of late at night now.
I know, it's 9:30 at night for all you listening.
I'm slowing down here.
Yeah.
I have had my moments of, this is what I would tell them. I think like Mother Teresa, once was asked this question. A man said, I'll help you, I'll give you any kind of money. She's like, no, I don't need that. He says, but I want to help you. She said, all right, find some homeless person and tell them they're not alone. So I definitely want devotees to know that Krishna loves them, even if they don't believe it.
Beautiful.
And that your whole life is just to repay that love, like to catch up,
Yeah.
Like we're way behind in payments. And that's all. That's really what bhakti is all about. It's just repaying Krishna. And so if you're having trouble like in sadhana, especially with japa, just think, japa is just the way I repay. And I pray to Krishna and say, can you help me learn how to love you? Because I want to repay you. I want to reciprocate with your love. And it's such a beautiful thought to think the Supreme Personality of Godhead actually loves you. That's like, you meditate on that.
Yeah.
You go crazy in ecstasy just thinking about it. It's like, wow, the Supreme Personality of Godhead loves me and I don't even want to sit down with him and chant his name. That's sick, isn't it? It's when you meditate on Krishna's love, things just become easier and they all fall into place. This person actually cares about me. He wants a relationship with me. He just wants me to love him. And what am I doing?
Yeah.
I'm not making time for him. I'm loving other things. It just makes the whole process of bhakti easier, and it makes it so attractive to anyone. What's bhakti? God loves you, and he wants your love. That's bhakti. And just give it to him. That's bhakti.
Amazing.
That's my message, everyone.
Thank you so much.
For 2024.
Thank you.
And 2025, and 2026, and 3026, 4026.
Stays real consistent.
Could we go through your books and just see?
Oh, yeah. So
You can hold them up to that camera there in front of you.
So this book, this is called Japa Affirmations. And what I did was I took all the main principles of the Japa course and I turned them into affirmations. And the beauty of affirmations is affirmation takes an idea from the head into the heart. So you understand it with your head, but when you say it as an affirmation, you feel it and the feeling motivates you. And so each affirmation is a way of adjusting to the mind, to put the mind in an ideal state for japa, right? An ideal positive state, an open state, a state of appreciation of the holy name. And devotees have told me this was like really helped them. And I didn't even, this was not my idea. A devotee, I written the affirmations, he said, you should write a book and we'll publish it. I said, okay, whatever. Just like, okay. Spend a few days explaining everything. And this is my best-selling book. It just took off like it wasn't even planned. So then I decided, why don't we make cards from the affirmations? And we have cards.
That you can actually use while you're chanting.
Each card is an affirmation. All I have to do is figure out how to open the box.
Problem.
There we go.
Oh, I figured it out. So each card is an affirmation. Now I have to do is figure out how to get the cards out of the box. Each card is an affirmation. So I happily and enthusiastically welcome the holy names every japa session. So this is how to start positive.
Right.
I start with a positive. And then on the back, it has an explanation what it means. And then you have the next one. I easily chant my prescribed number of rounds with focus and attention. So you're kind of setting your mind that we can do this is easy. Otherwise, like, oh, this is so hard, I can't do it. And so if you like the affirmation, you just put it down while you're chanting, you look at it. And so that's the idea. So this is, these have been very popular. They just came out. We just got them a few months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And
could you get these online?
You can get these on, actually the cards you can get at Krishna.com.
Krishna.com.
The japa book you can get at Krishna.com. You also get it on my Amazon.
Okay. I'll put the link in the description.
And then this is a book of short, it's called Uplift Yourself, Change the World. What I did was I went through all the teachings, the lectures, and I tried to extract like what was I talking about? What was kind of like the essence of what maybe over 20 years of teaching about one thing. Mm-hmm. So then we have chapters with like 6, 8, 10 quotes under each section. I think there's like 30 or so sections of different interesting topics about self-development, how I can change, but I think I can't. We have about vows, we have forgiveness, we have about, self-care, like that, just little sayings. And then when I started doing my seminars, as I said, I was realizing that one of the challenges is taking the philosophy and figuring out how to live it and practice it like 24/7. So then I did the series of books called Living the Wisdom of Bhakti. And it's all taking principles of bhakti and then bringing them down to how would you apply this practically, like what this means, because a lot of times we don't think about it.
Yeah.
So we have 2 volumes. And they're just taking various topics on japa, the same similar topics, forgiveness, self-care, work, marriage, so many topics, dealing with envy, dealing with criticism, like that. And then bringing it down practically, analyzing it, kind of threadbare. And then what does humility look like in real life, day to day? Why are you criticizing? What's the psychology behind your criticism? How do you overcome it? Things like that. So that's on Amazon also.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Mahatma Prabhu. I really appreciate you coming and talking with me. And Mathura Prabhu, thank you for joining also and bringing Prabhu. And Great. Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
for everyone listening, I'm going to put all the links for these books in the description. Also, if you want to get in touch with Mahatma Prabhu or Mathura Prabhu, I'll put their how to get in contact with them also in the comments. But please subscribe, like, and share. And thank you again, Prabhus, for
Hare
joining.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna Hare